Hi, my name is Yauvapa Siriwattasit. I'm a patent consultant at one of the largest international law firms in Southeast Asia. I'm a trans man, and my pronouns are he, him, or they, them. The definition of a civil partnership tends to vary with the law of each country. In Thailand, a civil partnership is a legally binding and registered contract between two consenting and competent parties. Well, at least one of these parties must be a Thai national, and both of these parties must be at the age of majority, which is around 17 years. Minors wanting civil partnership will need to acquire consent from their parents, legal guardians, or the courts before entering into such a partnership. Like any other agreement, a civil partnership requires each civil partner to fulfill several obligations to each other and also enjoy certain rights. However, only some of these rights and obligations that are available for married couples will not be accessible to civil partners. What a civil partnership is not, however, is a common law marriage. Suppose a couple, they can be heterosexual or same-sex couple. Suppose this couple has been living together for around 10 to 20 years. And they have presented themselves as either civil partners or a married couple to the outside world during that time period. However, their cohabitation will not be viewed as either a civil partnership or a marriage in the eyes of Thai law. In the context of the draft bill in Thailand, not much. Civil partners will be entitled to around 80 to 90% of the same rights and obligations as a traditionally married couple. Even the process of dissolving a civil partnership and a heterosexual marriage are fundamentally the same. However, several rights and obligations will not be accessible to civil partners, unlike among married couples. For example, we can talk about tax breaks. Unfortunately, the draft bill has made no mention of any tax deductions that civil partners will be entitled to, when these tax deductions will be enjoyed by married couples. Civil partnerships will also require the civil partners to sign a civil partnership agreement rather than a marriage certificate. The enforceability of this agreement will be more subject to Thailand's contract laws rather than the marriage or family laws. This would mean that the civil partners may have some more breathing room in adding clauses to the civil partnership agreement. However, they have to keep in mind certain limitations before they do so. Firstly, the clauses should not violate any existing laws in Thailand. If so, the agreement may be void completely in serious cases, or they will be struck off the agreement. Secondly, the clauses and how they are structured should follow the rules and procedures outlined in the ministerial regulations for civil partnerships. Otherwise, the clauses themselves may not be enforceable. The draft bill defines civil partners as two persons of the same biological sex. This would indicate that heterosexual couples will be barred from entering into a civil partnership. Moreover, the draft bill only permits a civil partnership between cisgender couples, since Thailand has not yet legalized sex change. Unfortunately, the draft bill remains silent on this matter. In fact, the draft bill makes no mention, or rather it remains unclear now whether a foreign partner of a Thai national will be granted a marriage visa. We are talking about same-sex partnerships here. And keeping this in mind, it would be unlikely that a non-Thai national who had entered into a civil partnership with a Thai national will be granted full citizenship. This will be the case if the bill is passed without any amendments to that effect. If passed, the draft bill will provide civil partners with many of the benefits enjoyed by traditionally married couples. Some of these are the ability to jointly manage properties and take out loans and mortgages, adoption rights. The one civil partner will be able to adopt the adopted child or the biological child of the other partner and have joint parental rights. Thirdly, one civil partner can act on behalf of the other who happens to be either the injured party or the deceased in criminal proceedings. The dissolution of civil partnerships now will proceed in the same way as a divorce between heterosexual couples and will be subject to the laws of the Civil and Commercial Code of Thailand. And lastly, if a civil partner dies, the surviving partner will be entitled to the inheritance of the deceased. But to prevent, or rather to reduce the possibility of any inheritance disputes, it would be advisable for each partner to draw up a will which would be considered valid in Thai law. The draft bill has several sticking points, which has led to a lot of controversy among the LGBTQ community in Thailand. Much of the debate surrounds the lack of benefits available to the civil partners when they are made available to traditionally married couples. The most important of which are the draft bill remains unclear on whether one civil partner can make medical decisions on behalf of the other. However, if the ill partner now wishes to invoke their right to refuse treatment, then they will have to draw up or create a living will or advance directive. A living will is actually a legal document through which the patient can inform healthcare providers of their medical wishes in case that they become incapacitated due to illness or injury. Secondly, the draft bill also remains unclear on whether each civil partner can take up each other's surnames or even hyphenate each other's last names. But in Thailand, the hyphenation of last names is an unheard of practice. So it may not be that important. Thirdly, as stated before, tax deductions will not be available to civil partners, and also civil partners will not be eligible for social security benefits from the other civil partner. And finally, the draft bill also doesn't make it clear whether a foreign national who has entered into a civil partnership with a Thai national will be granted either a marriage visa or full Thai citizenship. So you can see that the draft bill does not grant equal marriage rights. Unfortunately, there's no data available to the public at the moment on this particular subject matter. But in a survey conducted by YouGov.com, about 3 out of 5 Thai netizens, which is around 63%, actually supports same-sex partnerships. The highest opposition came mainly from the Southerners in Thailand, who opposed the Civil Unions Bill on religious grounds. And actually, in the southern region of Thailand, the approval rating was just 60% compared to 90% in the rest of the provinces. In another survey conducted by the UNDP, around 2/3 of Thai people had no objections to same-sex unions. And also a different survey conducted by LGBTQ activists in Thailand stated that 80% of respondents actually approved of same-sex civil unions. However, it must be stated that the data was collected back in 2019, so there may be variations in regards to the approval rate, but I don't think the difference will be that stark. Thailand is still mainly a conservative society, despite the image that it tries to project to the outside world. There's still a lot of stigma attached to people who deviate from the norm here, regardless of their sexual orientation. However, the statistics collected by YouGov and the UNDP brings a semblance of hope to the situation. The numbers indicate that the attitudes of Thai society towards LGBTQ communities and their issues are now changing for the better. People are now more open towards helping the LGBTQ community resolve the problems that they are currently facing. And Thai society is even now more accepting and supportive of the community. But this also means that the LGBTQ community should continue to educate Thai society regarding their issues in order to keep the momentum going. In my personal experience, the segment of Thai society who are either indifferent or disapproving of the community are usually doing so out of sheer ignorance. Sometimes they are too scared to ask, and sometimes they don't know who to ask or how to ask. So it is our job to educate them as well. And for example, I was at a business function and I had to explain to someone there as to why LGBTQ couples need equal marriage rights. It just took me 15 minutes and some empathy and understanding and education from my end to convince them that marriage equality is truly the way forward. So even if we have a difficult path ahead of us, we should do our best to approach the matter with compassion and understanding, not just a knee-jerk reaction to perceived persecution. Of course, everything depends on context. Personally, I'm split down the middle on this. On one hand, I am opposed to the bill because it does not grant full equal marriage rights. Several of the rights and obligations that are available to traditionally married couples are not made available to civil partners, which to me is unacceptable. And there's a question being asked, and to which I agree to this argument, that why have a separate civil unions bill when all you can do is just amend the marriage laws in the civil and commercial code in order to grant the LGBTQ community the equal marriage rights. And having a separate civil unions bill can lead to the further marginalization of the LGBTQ community by categorizing their relationships as separate from the norm, separate from humanity somehow. And someone's humanity and dignity should never ever be up for debate or questioned. No one deserves that. However, from a practical point of view, we have to admit that the draft Civil Unions Bill marks a major step forward in equal marriage rights in Thailand. And it has been a long time coming for the LGBTQ community here. Countries like the United States and Portugal had a civil partnership law before graduating to granting the LGBTQ communities their full marriage rights. And while I agree with the opponents to this bill, I would like the dissenters to set aside their ideals for a second and think about these issues. Without a civil unions bill, the same-sex couples who want to start a family can't adopt children. What about them? And what if they want to jointly buy a house? What then? And if one of the partners is a victim of a crime and is lying comatose in hospital, the other can't do a thing. They can't act on their behalf, and you have to think about the inheritance. So overall, we need to think about them. So there are practical considerations to the Civil Unions Bill, plus the amendments to the marriage laws in the Civil and Commercial Code of Thailand are also being done simultaneously, so that these laws will be compatible with the laws of the Civil Unions Bill once it is passed. So with all these practical considerations, I would say that it has tipped the scales towards me being in favor of the Civil Unions Bill. The draft bill was approved by the Cabinet on July 8, 2020. It is now awaiting to be listed in the agenda of the House of Representatives Coordinating Committee. After that, it will be submitted to the House of Representatives and the Senate for debate and amendments before being put to a vote in Parliament. Knowing the current status of the bill, I would have to say that it may take around 3 to 4 years before it gets passed into law. That is, if the bill gets enough votes and the political situation in Thailand remains stable. Transgendered people have been excluded from the Civil Partnerships Bill, as I have stated before. And in order for them to take advantage of civil partnerships once the bill is passed, it may be necessary for them to actually be listed as the non-preferred gender in the Civil Partnership Agreement, because that is the only practical solution for now. But I believe that there is a sex change bill that is being considered right now. And a lot of the LGBTQ lobbyists are pushing for it to be passed and approved. So once Thailand's sex change bill has been drafted, debated, amended and passed, then it will give transgender people more hope in gaining equal marriage rights. Because, for example, I'm transgender myself, and once I'm recognized as a man on paper, legally, I can actually get married to a woman. Yeah. And that will be marriage, not civil partnership.